Greetings, foolish mortals. This, of course, is my recap video for the Silk Road Trilogy, where I talk about things I left out of the videos, correct mistakes that I made in the videos, and answer questions from Gaon and Navi level patrons on Patreon. As always, a warm welcome to all the new fans who found my channel through Project Imperial China, or just from the algorithm being in my favor. So, let's get into it. First of all, many of you asked what happened to my short-lived video on the family tree of the Hebrew language, and the answer is that I delisted it. I was in a complete rush when I made it, it was way out of my comfort zone, and I should have just given myself some extra time to work on the other videos, because this ended up being the worst thing I've ever made. It was visually boring, it made a bunch of mistakes, and most of all, I really hated the idea of this being someone's introduction to the channel. The truth is that there are a lot of things I would like to be able to do with this channel, but I am just one person, and there are other people who can do this particular thing better than me. In that spirit, I have basically handed off this concept to another newer channel called Che Languages that you should definitely check out. He covers all kinds of stuff from the particulars of Duolingo to obscure members of well-known language families, and he deserves a lot more attention for the good work he's doing, so give that a look. Secondly, many of you have asked when I'm going to do other specials like these, or have even requested specific ones. And I'm going to say the same thing I said after the India special. Making these videos is a full-time job, it's the only job I have, and it takes up my entire workday. And 80 to 90% of the time spent making these videos is either doing research or drawing the artwork, including the maps. And these specials require much more research and much more artwork than the regular episodes. In terms of research, there isn't as much to go on with these outline communities, and I have to work a lot harder to find sources. I have to go to places, I have to talk to experts. And when I'm doing the artwork for the sort of main chronology videos, not only am I presenting a narrower set of locations and time periods to draw, but often certain places and people will reappear in multiple videos, and I can reuse or modify those drawings. But with the specials, it's all from scratch, and I'm trying to cover the whole sweeping history of Jews in one particular region. And with both India, and now with the Silk Road Trilogy, the videos actually took more than 2 weeks to make, even as they were coming out every 2 weeks. So, they're called specials for a reason, and I do have some ideas for next year. I'm not going to say what, because I don't want to create expectations, but if all goes well, there will be more in the future. So I got a lot of pushback regarding my characterization of Reza Shah, mainly contending that he was not, in fact, a Nazi. Now, an argument could be made that he was not technically a member of the Nazi Party, nor did he agree with pro-Nazi aspirations within Iran to exterminate the Jews. He certainly affirmed in the 1930s that Jews were not separate from the Iranian public, but he also did all the things that I said he did, and he was perfectly happy to allow Nazi propaganda and influence into the country for his own benefit. So he was certainly as culpable as any other pro-Axis government, and I don't see the same kind of enthusiasm coming to defend, say, Mussolini's treatment of Jews. A lot of people also felt that my overview of Iran's declining Jewish population in the 19th century was incomplete, alerting me to the fact that, in addition to leaving the country, many Jews, particularly in the very conservative eastern part of the country, were often enthusiastic converts to the new religion of Baha'i. And yeah, this is absolutely something that my sources had neglected, and it's unfortunate that they did. Baha'i, for those not aware, is a religion that emerged in 19th century Iran. It grew out of Shia Islam, but it sort of attempts to encompass many other religions, and it respects the validity of all religions, basically. It's also closely tied to Israel, through Haifa and Acre being its holy cities. And much as the current Iranian government has whitewashed its policy regarding Jews, they have no such qualms about hiding the persecution of Baha'i. I'm not really qualified to say more, but if you want to learn, there will be a link in the corner to Let's Talk Religions video series on Baha'i. Now, I was expecting people to speak up about this, and I wasn't disappointed. Why didn't I talk about Israel's role in the Iran-Contra affair? And if you don't know what that is, here's Mr. Beat's video. You can watch that and come back here for the relevant context. Are you back? Cool. I'm gonna pull back the curtain a little bit and talk some more about how I make these videos. When I make these videos, I start out with a script that is always longer than what I actually record for voiceover. And even when that's done, I usually end up cutting out a good portion of the voiceover as well. The Iran video, which was already pretty long, definitely, no doubt, holds the record for having the most cut out. And one of those things that I cut out was Iran-Contra. Basically, when I stepped back and looked at it, I'm like, this doesn't belong here. This was a video about Jews in Iran. Ideally, I will revisit the Iran-Contra affair in the future, but I felt that this just wasn't the right video to do that. Just a quick clarification here. I may have given the impression that mahallas were only Jewish neighborhoods, and that would be the wrong conclusion. Most of the different ethnic groups in Central Asia had their own mahallas. Central Asia has this very unusual geography where there aren't any natural borders. So the climate is a lot more variable and the culture tends to be a lot more migratory. So there are lots of people groups existing in the same space but remaining very distinct from each other. And the mahalla is an outgrowth of that. Another place that's like that is the Sahel in West Africa, which, coincidentally, also had a notable Jewish community at one point. Now, last week, I posted a poll asking which of the 3 episodes I had a family connection to. Most people said Iran, I guess because of the onion slapping thing. Other people said Central Asia because my name is Aronov, which is actually more common among Bukharim than among Ashkenazim. But I'm not Bukharan, my family connection is to China. When I was doing research for this video, I found out that Abraham Kaufman was born in a small village called Meglin. You're probably getting some lights popping on over your heads. And I thought, that's very interesting, because Meglin is this very small village at the very edge of the Pale of Settlement, and that's where all the Aronavim come from. So, as it turns out, Kaufman would have been my great-grandfather's 3rd cousin? You know, with Jewish history, once you start looking into the family connections, it never ends. But this in particular quite pleased me, especially because I wasn't looking for it. And that was very cool. So, regarding the meeting between Kalish-Hata and Shimon Sholem Kalish, I got a lot of responses with alternate versions of this story, of which there are many. They all disagree on some part of it, what Kalish's exact words were, whom he spoke to, and where the meeting took place. They only agree that it happened. I was trying to pull from as many sources as I could find on this and basically came down on the version that seemed to make the most sense to me. So, grain of salt. And a quick correction, I used the same Chinese characters for Rosenfeld as I did for Hofeng Shan. I don't actually know Chinese, and I guess I absent-mindedly just forgot to change the characters when I reused the template for the name. Oops. Now, Gaon level patron Neve Tal asks, what were/are some aspects to the minhag in Kaifeng, or China in general, that are clearly the result of Confucian influence rather than just being a part of the aforementioned commonality? You already mentioned the return of animal sacrifices as a form of ancestor veneration. I was wondering if there were any other notable examples. There's a big one, and it's actually pretty important to understanding Kaifeng's decline. But I left it out of the video because it was too difficult to explain in a concise or visually interesting manner. Han Chinese society, and Confucianism very strongly reinforces this, is very patrilineal, more so even than Western cultures. Judaism is of course matrilineal, whereby Jewishness by birth is passed on automatically through the mother. In the West, that wasn't as much of a contradiction with the prevailing culture, because that was more of a society where married couples lived on their own. They were their own household. But in medieval and early modern China, it was expected for a married woman to live with her husband's family. So on the one hand, you have, say, a marriage between a Jewish man and a Han woman. She converts and lives with the Jews. But for a Jewish woman to marry a Han man, even though her children should theoretically be Jewish by birth, it doesn't matter because she's not inside that community anymore. This is also a big problem for the halachic status of kaifangim today, because since the 1810s, kaifeng has been without a rabbi, meaning there was no longer anyone authorized to perform conversions of Han women to Judaism in mixed marriages. And as a result, most kaifangim today who have held on to their Jewishness are not technically Jewish by law. I mean, they clearly are, in a very meaningful way, but you know what I mean. In addition to saving the kaifeng community from extinction, this is one of the reasons why there was a big push to re-establish a rabbinate in Kaifeng in the 19th century. And it's also why the Israeli rabbinate are being real dicks to the kaifangim right now. Gaon-level patron Austin Sheffalu asks, "You mentioned in Return of the Conversos that there was a small community of Portuguese Jews who fled to Japan. Was there any contact between this Japanese community and the Kaifeng Jews?" The short answer is no, but there are two parts to this question. First, what happened to the Jews in Nagasaki was the same thing that happened to the Jews in Macau. They had nowhere to escape to, like they'd had in India, and they were quickly caught by the Portuguese Inquisition. The other aspect is that Kaifeng was just a very remote city. When you look at the places that Portuguese conversos escaped to, they're all port cities, like Amsterdam or London or Livorno or Hamburg or Constantinople. Now, during the era of the Silk Road, Kaifeng was a kind of port. It was a port on a land route, much in the same way that Harbin was later a port on a land route, the railway. And that's why it was the capital of the Song dynasty. But without the Silk Road, Kaifeng was just a provincial capital at best, located hundreds of miles inland up a very shallow and extremely dangerous temperamental river. It just wasn't an easy place to get to anymore. And that's assuming you knew where to go in the first place. Maybe if the kaifangim had survived in a few other places where they had also lived earlier, like Hangzhou and a couple of other coastal cities, it would be a different story. But being inland was fundamentally the root of Kaifeng's later isolation. And that's it for the Silk Road trilogy. Next time, we're going back to the 18th century, where a whole lot is going on, and everything is changing real fast. Special thanks to my patrons, including Jeremy Biskin, Jay Fleischman, Osha Gordon, Sergei Gerasimov, Matthew Brotman, Austin Sheffalu, Gary Davidson, Shaheen Kyanpour, Lena M., Greg Maev, Brian Mechanic, Branch Ortiz, Alestavsky, JP Strathausen, Navet Tal, Brian Tooten, Useful Charts, Earl Weiss, and Baxter Williams. I will see you next time.